Welcome to Eleanor's World, my fellow and lovely members of the Lumos Lounge, your destination for magical stories and unforgettable journeys. Don't forget to comment the video. And for all of you that aren't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. Thank you for joining and helping to keep the magic alive. And now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Welcome back, Lumos Lounge. Today, we have another chapter, The Standard You Walk Past by bafflinghaze. Check out her story on Archive of Our Own. The link is in the video description down below. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Chapter 3. Harry took a slow breath, forcing his frown away. Melissa, point your wand at the dummies, not other students. It was Friday night, and the Great Hall was humid with the used air and body heat of over 30 students of the dueling club. Harry knew that Professor Flitwick and Neville were here somewhere, but it bloody felt like Harry was on his own. Melissa, a fourth-year Gryffindor, nodded wisely at his words, but Harry had no doubt that she'd forget and Harry would be shielding yet another student from a spell. "Harry, sir, can you help me with this?" "Smile, Harry." The entire day had felt weird. He had woken feeling distinctly off and much too early, had done so for over a week. He had seen Malfoy again, quietly working at his desk. They just exchanged nods, that's all. And when Harry thought he should say something, Malfoy just looked at him and made Harry feel stupid without even a smirk. Double potions had been a disaster, and Harry felt absurdly sleepy during transfigurations and just managed to scrape by without a detention. "Sir? Sir?" Harry turned and nodded at the second-year Hufflepuff. He cast his ninth protego and watched as the girl struggled through the spell. After her, a cluster of second-years wanted another demonstration of the shield spell, and then Harry needed to go see the sixth-years girls who appeared to be shooting glances at him and not undertaking much dueling practice, and bloody Zacharias Smith and Jeffrey Hooper were shooting childish transfiguration spells at their dummy. He spun round, startled, as someone tapped him on the shoulder, wand rising. Neville smiled tiredly. "Better start winding down, Harry." Harry lowered his wand sheepishly. Yeah. Neville nodded and the hall filled with his voice. It took a good 10 minutes before the last students cleared, though, as many of them wanted last-minute advice. Ginny popped her head in as Harry, Neville, and Professor Flitwick were setting the benches and tables back into place. Neville quickly hurried over to her, throwing Harry a goodbye. "Oh, and Harry," Ginny called. "Don't forget Quidditch practice tomorrow." Harry waved his hand. "Yeah, got it." Ginny waved cheerfully at him and Flitwick before dragging Neville away by his arm. "Good work, Harry," Flitwick said. The last table settled into place with a sweep of his wand. "I'll be testing the fourth years next week. Some of them are ready to advance. Do you mind a short dueling demonstration in 2 weeks' time?" Harry shook his head. "Sure." "Good night, Professor." Flitwick nodded. "Good night." Briskly, Flitwick headed out of the Great Hall, Harry quickly following behind. The doors creaked closed behind them. Ron and Hermione were in the 8th-year common room at one of the tables near the left fireplace. Hermione caught his eye almost immediately. "Homework," she mouthed across the room. Harry nodded. He went quickly to his dorm room. The door opened at his magical signature, and Harry hurried over to his desk to retrieve his things. Malfoy's bed curtains were drawn up already. As always, a glance at Malfoy's desk found it completely empty. Harry frowned. He had seen Malfoy sitting there, working, more than once. Harry's own desk was currently a bloody mess. He quickly checked the Marauder's map, and yes, Malfoy was indeed in bed. Harry exhaled. At least he wasn't hallucinating. He swept up his books and hurried back down to the common room. Hermione gave him a pleased look as he plopped down next to Ron, who held a quill in one hand and a large cookie in the other. Ron gave him a muffled greeting and quickly ducked his head under Hermione's look. Harry immediately descended on his Transfigurations essay, due Monday in 3 days' time. He knew Hermione would be satisfied if he completed it before last-minute Sunday night. Almost too soon, though, Hermione stood up. "Let's end early," she said, blushing. "It is Friday." Harry grinned, giving Ron a pointed look. "If you say so." Hermione rolled her eyes as she took Ron's arm. Sleep well, okay, Harry? Of course, Harry replied nonchalantly. You both go up ahead. I just want to finish this. Hermione touched his arm lightly. Good for you. Just do sleep, okay? He nodded back, lowering his eyes back to his work. A small part of him wished Hermione and Ron still accompanied him to bed. Night, mate, Ron quickly said, and he and Hermione disappeared up the stairs. Still feeling off, Harry eventually trudged into bed. Draco watched as an fat muggle man slapped little Harry across the face after failing to produce perfect rashers of bacon. Harry was babbling, I'm sorry, the man snarled, booting Harry in the back of the knee. Go to your cupboard, boy. You're not allowed out until my say. So. The dream warped as the cream-white door of a cupboard under the stairs loomed over them, then shrunk down to its normal size. The man, Vernon, Draco, had heard his name spoken in a previous dream, opened the door with a bang and slammed it just as Harry slipped inside. As Draco was transported into the dark space, too small to stand in, Draco came to the horrible realization that this was Potter's room. All around him, the words "freak" and "no one loves you" bounced. Draco's heart nearly broke because Mother would never do something like this, not to Draco, and even Father wouldn't dare, for all the hatred he contributed to, for all the jeopardization of his own heir. Draco slumped down in the bed, drawing little Harry into his lap. He sang the star lullaby again, until little Harry stopped crying, until little Harry stopped trembling and sniffling. When Draco woke, Potter was curled against his front, somehow crossing the space between them during the night. The dried tear tracks made it all real, and Draco's stomach sank. At that moment, Draco sincerely hated himself. For all his supposed intelligence and slitheriness, he had failed to collect correct information, and instead had spouted whatever things matched his anger. Why hadn't Potter corrected him? Why had Potter saved him? Draco carried Potter back to his own bed and cleaned the tears with a wet flannel. Tucking Potter in felt ritualistic. He neatened out the covers, cast the warming charm, and for a brief moment indulged in brushing his fingers lightly through Potter's hair. And sighed, and sighed. He was only doing this to cancel his debts to Potter. Nothing more would come of it. Harry woke up Saturday morning yet again feeling distinctly weird. His blanket was still covering him, which was comforting but strange. It seemed that, this past week, Harry had yet to kick them off like he used to. It was even stranger to feel hungry, and there was a tune was stuck in his head. Harry rolled over to face the window, and Malfoy's empty bed. It was past sunrise, and the entire room, east-facing, was awash with the golden light. It was odd, a mystery. Malfoy's desk, empty. Malfoy's bed, made, curtains pulled back. If it weren't for the smooth rocks on Malfoy's bedside table, and the trunk at the foot of the bed, and the clothes Harry supposed hung in Malfoy's wardrobe, Harry would have thought he was the only student in the room. It felt as though Harry would count his interactions with Malfoy since the war trials on just one hand. With a sense of déjà vu, he took out the Marauders map and zeroed in on Draco Malfoy. 15 minutes later, Harry burst into the kitchens. The kitchens were bustling, house elves working tirelessly, air permeated with the heavenly scent of baking bread. Harry's eyes were immediately drawn to the calm Malfoy, seated at a table off to the side. Malfoy was surprised to see him. Gray eyes widened almost comically, and his lips were twisting into and then his face settled down to coolness. Malfoy gave Harry a curt nod, and he looked back down. Harry blinked, but Malfoy didn't say anything. No insults. Not even a smirk. Malfoy's face was blank, just like it was at the war trials when Malfoy had sat passively in front of the Wizengamot, awaiting his judgment. His face had gained some kind of emotion when Harry stepped up to speak. He offered a grudging thanks when Harry returned his wand, and had narrowed eyes when Harry extended his hand. But now it was emotionless. Emotion drew his eyes away from Malfoy to the house elf in front of him. Winky blinked wide-eyed at Harry and wrung her hand. Would Master Harry be liking breakfast? Harry looked briefly at Malfoy, whose head remained turned away. Yeah, thanks, Winky. Winky nodded and led Harry to the table Malfoy was sitting at. Two other house elves set down some dishes and a cup and jug across the table and slightly to the side of Malfoy. Harry approached it a bit sheepishly. He probably annoyed Malfoy, now that he was closer and noticed the spread of parchment and books. Malfoy didn't lift his head as he sat down, however, and Harry took that as a reluctant assent to silent company. As he ate, he listened to the bustle of the house elves and the steady scratching of Malfoy's quill. There was a moment when he was suddenly fascinated by Malfoy's long fingers, articulating a precise, elegant handwriting. Harry winced, thinking about how the professors would have felt looking at his own handwriting. Malfoy's head shifted as he turned to one of his books, and Harry's eyes were caught by the pale blonde hair that was long enough to partly curtain Malfoy's eye. Malfoy's hair was no longer slicked back, but instead smooth and straight and somewhat curled around his ears. It was a little surprising when Harry realized he had finished eating. Malfoy was still working, not once meeting Harry's eyes. Harry stood up, cringing as the chair squeaked. He looked at Malfoy again. Bye, he said, then quickly closed his mouth. Malfoy glanced up, yes, nodded, another nod, and looked down. Oh. It was in the slightest haze of disbelief in which Harry thanked the house elves and wandered back to the 8th-year common room. He had sat with Malfoy at the same table for over 15 minutes, without insulting or hexing each other. Not that Malfoy spoke, not that Harry said much at all. He almost ran the last stretch to the privacy of the dorm room to examine the map. He couldn't help feeling vaguely disappointed in learning that Malfoy was still in the kitchens. I need some reason to stay longer. The moment Potter left the kitchens, Draco let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Now that Potter was gone, Draco allowed himself, just a little, to panic. Why did Potter come to the kitchens? Why did Potter sit down at the table? And why did Potter stare at him the entire time? Draco warily touched his hair, but it was still perfect. Did Potter find out about the sleepwalking? Draco stilled. What if he did? Potter had not confronted him about anything, however, and had said very little. Draco deduced that Potter had not found out, and if Draco could have his way, Potter wouldn't ever. But Draco knew his luck, or lack thereof. If he continued letting Potter sleep in his bed, Potter will find out. And Draco wasn't bloody optimistic enough to believe that Potter would see the good side of what Draco was doing. The only solutions Draco could think of was to return Potter to his own bed, or to set up wards that kept Potter away. Before bed, Draco placed repelling wards in the space between the foot of his bed to the nearest far wall. His curtains, to Potter's side, were charmed tightly shut. However, Draco was woken when Potter collapsed on the floor just outside his wards. The git just curled up on the floor, and Draco gave in to the urge to rub his eyes. Gritting his teeth, he levitated the git back to not Draco's bed, dumping the sleeping savior on the messed-up sheets before resolutely returning to his own bed. Draco was not surprised when he was prematurely forced awake only a few hours later to find Potter slumped at the base of his bed. Fuck you, Potter. You just have to make it hard for me, don't you? Draco glared at him, slobbering over the floor. The cold floor. Reluctantly, Draco got up from bed, dispelled the repelling wards, scooped Potter up, and put him down on his bed. Potter's breathing settled. Fucking Potter and fucking world? You better give me good luck for all this, and please don't kill me. Draco felt like laughing at his own stupid plea. Harry woke, tired, irritated, and a bit sore. He was too late to catch Malfoy with the sun streaming brightly through the windows. At breakfast, Harry had no appetite for chewing, and the porridge felt like flavorless paste in his mouth. Instead, he nursed a cup of coffee as his eyes shifted to the Slytherin table. It was a sparse house this year, the students sitting in tight clusters of mixed years, but Harry couldn't see Malfoy. It was a Sunday, and most students slept in, but he had seen Malfoy up before the sun even rose. Hey, Hermione! In the back of his mind, Harry winced, belatedly realizing that he'd just cut into Hermione's talk, which he hadn't been paying attention to. However, Hermione turned to him with questioning eyes, no trace of anger or irritation on her face. He blinked sheepishly. Have you seen Malfoy? Ron spluttered on his bacon. Why asking us? Isn't he your dorm mate? Hermione gave a little exasperated shake of her head. You're not getting obsessed with him again now, are you? Harry frowned. Course not, he protested. I just realized that I never actually see him in the room. I think only at classes. Hermione gave Harry a steady look. In that case, I probably see him more than you, she said slowly. He takes runes and arithmancy, as well as defense and potions. Harry blinked. He couldn't recall seeing Malfoy in defense or potions. Harry shrugged under Hermione's gaze. Sorry, you were talking about... Hermione's eyes brightened and she launched back into her talk. If Malfoy did his work in the kitchens in the morning, he probably ate breakfast there too. It's not a bad idea, actually. It would mean Harry could eat in peace, rather than be talked to, talked about, have letters rained upon his head and asked for yet another autograph. At least he now charged per autograph. Ron thought it would be a good idea to donate it to the War Orphans Fund. Harry felt a plan form in his head. Harry almost jumped up with success when he saw Malfoy at lunch, sitting at the end of the Slytherin table nearest to the professors. Malfoy sat straight-backed and had a cool expression on his face. There was an almost visible circle surrounding Malfoy that the other students avoided, skirting around him. The way Malfoy ate was fascinating, neatly, quickly, but with a grace. At times, Malfoy's eyes idly swept the hall, and once, Harry accidentally met his gaze. Malfoy kept staring at him, and feeling a bit uncomfortable for having been caught looking, Harry hesitantly tipped his head. Malfoy looked just a bit startled, but he quickly returned the nod and broke eye contact. After that, Harry made sure to look away when Malfoy's eyes started to wander near him. But it was after one of those times that, when Harry looked back, Malfoy had already left. Dinner was an eerie repeat of lunch. Malfoy, end of the table, invisible barrier around him, with Harry trying not to meet his eye. Malfoy left as soon as he finished eating, and Harry itched to chase after him, to follow him to their room. Harry waited with barely concealed impatience for Hermione and Ron to finish eating. Or maybe not very concealed at all. Harry, what's gotten into you? Hermione asked across the table. Harry spluttered. He looked down at his plate, barely eaten. Just feeling tired, he muttered. Hermione gave a non-committal hum and looked to Ron. Harry followed her gaze. Ron was still eating, and after a few seconds, he slowly looked up. Whomaf? Ron questioned. Hermione rolled her eyes at Ron, but placed a fond hand on his arm regardless. She turned back to Harry. Why don't you go back first then? Straight to bed. Okay. Harry stood up quickly and felt nauseous. Yeah, bed, he agreed weakly. If it gets bad, we can take you to the infirmary, Hermione added, frowning. Harry tried to smile reassuringly. I'll be fine. Hermione shot him a smile, and Ron mumbled an absent goodnight. Harry was almost used to the chorus of "Bye, Harry" from the Gryffindor table as he left. He waved back, the most he could do while not emptying his stomach on the floor. The corridors were blessedly empty, and Harry slipped into the common room without any fuss from the guardian portrait. The dorm seemed empty as he crossed the common room, climbed up the stairs and made his way to his room. Harry paused with his hand on the door handle. There was light under the door, and Harry fought to keep the nausea and excitement from mixing. Harry opened the door. His eyes immediately fixed upon the motion in the room. The bathroom door was simultaneously opening, and Malfoy appeared in a white shirt and trousers, contrasting starkly against the darkness of the bathroom behind him. Malfoy startled, flinching back and eyes widening. His wand appeared in his hand, warily raised, all before thought returned to Harry's head. It struck Harry how similar, yet how different it was from sixth year. He quickly backed a step, facing his palms up. Fuck, sorry. Malfoy's eyes narrowed. He didn't tuck his wand away, but his hand lowered. Very slowly, while still pinning Harry with his gaze, Malfoy shut the bathroom door. Harry squirmed a bit and fully stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. I guess you're gonna bed. Oh great, Harry, what the fuck did you just say? Malfoy didn't reply. Instead, he tilted his head slightly in acknowledgement and padded across the room, past Harry, to his bed on the far window side. The bed was already partially curtained. Malfoy pulled shut the curtains facing Harry's bed. Harry was still rooted at his spot by the door when Malfoy looked back at him and met his eyes. There wasn't a great haul between them this time. Nothing to let Harry pretend that he hadn't been watching Malfoy. Malfoy raised an eyebrow, and Harry's automatic reaction was to scowl back. He stepped away from the door and away from Malfoy, towards his own bed and trunk. Head turned away, he muttered a good night. The slide of curtain rings ended their non-conversation. Harry readied for bed quickly, nausea now a solid press against his eyes. Harry dropped his glasses carelessly on the bedside table and muttered his usual silencing charm. He'd deal with Malfoy another day. The headache pulled him into a restless sleep. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. If you'd like to support the channel, check out my Amazon wishlist or consider making a donation. Every little bit helps to keep the magic alive. See you next time, and until then, take care and keep dreaming.